everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be the Reread book tag. This is the 2020 version, and I was tagged by Leslie at the Nerdy Narrative probably sometime back in the fall. I don't know exactly when. I'm very behind on my tags, so felt like it was time to do one. So before we get started, leave a book emoji in the comments to let me know that you're here. So let's begin with the first question. And so obviously it's like, let's you assume you do reread if you're doing this tag. Yep. So where do you sit on the reading scale from almost never to all the time? So these days it's probably much closer to the almost never side of things, just because there's so many new books coming out, and I think with BookTube my TBR has like rapidly expanded to the point where I like feel like I can't reread things anymore. I feel like I just have to get through all of these new books, and there's just so many exciting things to read, and like as much as I do read, there's still only so much time I can spend reading. Question 2 is, has that changed over your reading life? And that is definitely yes. Like when I was younger, I used to reread all the time. And I think that's partly because like, pre-BookTube and everything else, there was like, it would only be like me looking in the bookstore or like sometimes browsing Amazon to try to find recommendations. I feel like I just had a much more limited supply of recommendations, so I wasn't picking up as many new books, and so it was like much easier for me to return to old favorites. And yeah, so like definitely that was something I used to do a lot more, but I think since probably undergrad I've stopped doing that as much. Certainly like since grad school I've really stopped doing that altogether. Probably more than half of my book collection is still at my parents' house, which is obviously not convenient for me to reread old favorites. The third question is, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book, or not till years later, or when the mood strikes. So certainly not immediately after finishing. Like I don't think that's ever been the case for me. Certainly these days it's definitely years later. I think, when the mood strikes is certainly like, yes, definitely that. So question 4 is, why do you reread books? So I think most people's answers for this is probably very similar, but like it's such a feeling of nostalgia, returning to old favorites, and just, I don't know, it's just so comforting, I think, to return to stories that you generally know. And it's nice because like, obviously I remember a lot of like the broad strokes, I think, of my favorites, but there are a lot of the details I just completely forget about. So, just like returning to that and being like, oh yeah, I totally remember how this happened, and like, oh, this is coming up next. That's such an exciting feeling, and it's just, yeah, like so comforting to return to that, and like, you're gonna love it, you're gonna have a great time. So like if you're kind of feeling down or anything like that, like that's just so nice to be able to pick up something that you're gonna have a great time with. The 5th question is, how do you reread? Faster, slower, or just the best bits? So that's an interesting question. Like I never like skip through parts. Also, like I definitely read the entire thing. Maybe faster. Like I already read pretty quickly, so like I don't know if it's significantly faster or anything like that, but I think it does kind of, I think, pick up because like you generally know the story, and so you can kind of like, oh yeah, I remember this, and I think that kind of like enables you to read it a bit faster. Also, just like in terms of the how you reread, recently I've been rereading books on audio because I think like for me, audiobooks, I don't know, I don't retain things as well when I hear it versus like seeing it. So I have found that either listening to like YA books or books that I've read before are really helpful, because like it doesn't really matter if I kind of zone out for a little bit. Like I generally, again, know where the story is going, at least with the ones that I'm rereading. So I've found that to be pretty helpful lately, and I think that's probably the most recent way I've reread something, was listening to it on audiobook. The 6th question is, who or what do you reread more specifically? Which authors or genres or individual books? So generally I think it's mostly fantasy books. I think the most recent like physical book I reread was the Kingkiller Chronicles by Rothfuss, and then I think I also listened to the Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamora, which is like a historical favorite, I think, of mine, as well as the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix, which I also really loved that. Back in the day, I used to reread the series by She Who Must Not Be Named, but I don't really want to get into that series these days. I think I probably reread some of the earlier Dresden Files books multiple times, but certainly I haven't reread some of the later ones, that's by Jim Butcher. I think those are like definitely the more significant ones. I probably reread the like Merlin series by T.A. Barron back in the day. You know, I can't even remember if I've even reread some of Brandon Sanderson's stuff. I probably haven't, which is odd. Anyway, we'll just move on. So question 7 is there a book that you found better when you reread it? I think most books, when I reread them, I feel about the same or just even more positive, just because, like, it's, again, comforting, you know where it's going, and I think just, like, remembering some of the little details that you may have forgotten is even more exciting. So, like, I guess in that sense, things are better when you reread them. And then question 8 is in one that was worse. So I don't think this is ever the case. Like, I don't feel like I ever think something is worse when I reread it, at least these days. I try to keep books that are my favorites, that I, like, want to reread, so I already feel, like, really good about them. So, like, I don't think I ever feel worse when rereading it. I will say sometimes there are definitely things that I just, like, straight up don't remember, like with Lyriel, which is the second book in the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix. It was a lot more angsty and, like, depressing than what I remembered. I was like, I just, like, completely, I guess, didn't pick up on this when I was younger, or just completely forgot about it. I'm not really sure which, but that was kind of surprising when I was listening to that. So I guess, like, I don't think that was really worse. It's just more unexpected. And then question 9 is, which one book have you reread the most times? So probably either Sabriel by Garth Nix or just generally anything by Tamora Pierce. My guess is I think I have reread The Protector of the Small Quartet the most times, but I don't know, like, it's probably pretty close between that and the Song of the Lioness Quartet, because I really enjoy both of them. So I guess just, like, some general thoughts on rereading. Like, it is something that I wish I did more. Like, I definitely would love to reread the Dresden Files, certainly, like, the Mercy Thompson series. So Moon Called, which is the first book in the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, was actually the March choice for my book club. My copies of most of the series are actually still, you know, back at my parents' house, so, like, I feel like I don't want to buy things again, so it's like, you know, then waiting on the library to see if I get a hold of that. But yeah, like, I think I would love to reread that. I think it'd be great to reread some Sanderson. I'll tag Stephanie at Miss Richards Reads, Kasha from Kasha's Book Cemetery, and Leah from Sufficiently Advanced Lena. I don't think any of them have done it yet, but if you have, like, obviously just ignore this. So I guess just let me know in the comments if you have any responses to anything that I said, and for your question of the day, do you enjoy rereading books? So I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.